Now, you guys know that people, based on history, are pretty racist, and a majority of the time it's for like some really stupid reason. And if you guys don't know, Asian people are like the best at being racist. And I feel like Koreans specifically, they're one of the most nationalistic groups. You can search it up and you'll get like five different posts instantly on why they're so nationalistic. But as a Korean, I could say firsthand that Koreans are pretty racist. And it's especially against African Americans. And I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I have many instances where Korean adults would offer me to drive me like one block because like bad people are out, and although they don't explicitly say, they, it's pretty obvious they're hinting towards African Americans. And many of them tell me that like dark-skinned people like commit a lot of crimes, which is a whole nother topic I can get into, but we'll put that off for now. But in Koreatown, there's a huge Korean and black population there. And I would say those two groups do not usually get along. And I'm not too sure on the black perception of Koreans, but I could say from the Korean side that our perception of African Americans is not too good. And from my research, I found several reasons. One major reason is the difference in culture. African American culture and Korean culture is very different because black culture is more about uh, ener- energy. It's more outgoing, and people are more likely to say what's on their mind. But Korean people are more submissive and quiet and almost overly respectful, if you could say that, because there's always like this baseline where you always have to be so respectful to the point it feels constricting, in my opinion. And with extreme Korean nationalism, and a lot of Korean people believe that they're like the superior race, along with the fact that they're mixing with another group who have a completely different personality. That doesn't work too well. And we're talking about the 1980s and the 1990s, so these people are like professionally ignorant. Obviously, we all know like our older generations are a little more racist than us, and it's a little unclear which side started the discrimination first because there was tensions before the major events that occurred. But what happened happened. But the tensions between the two groups escalated massively in two major events. One of them was in 1992, which is the LA riots. A lot of you guys probably know about that, but it was actually a year before that, known as the killing of Latasha Harlins. And thank you for Pastor Blake, who I interviewed. And he's the pastor of West Angeles, which I studied. And he gave me some great information to work with. But going back to the Latasha Harlins, she was a 15-year-old black girl who went into a Korean-owned store, and the owner was named Sunjadu, 49 years old. And some scuffle happened. It wasn't that big of a deal. She probably thought Latasha was stealing something. It was something about orange juice, so like it wasn't even a big deal. But what the important part is, as Latasha was leaving, uh, Sunjatu pulled a gun and shot her in the back of the head. And the thing was, a lot of members of the black community were telling younger children not to go into stores like hers because African Americans were being like discriminated against and treated badly by Korean stone owners. So this shows like tensions were already there between the two groups, but this murder made it a lot worse. But it was actually 2 weeks before that that Rodney King was beaten by several white police officers uh, from the LAPD. So the black community was already on their toes with anger. And going back to the Latasha murder, the most insane part of the whole ordeal was that Sunjata was not jailed, but rather she had like 5 years probation and like 400 hours of community service, which is insane. The fact that she killed a child and got away with it. But it was really the Rodney King decision which tipped the black community over the scale because the four white men who beat Rodney King were acquitted and they were not considered guilty of the crime. So that triggered the Los Angeles riots of 1992, which you probably know about. However, from there's a lot of sources that debate like how much damage is caused, but most of the sources estimate around 40 to 50% of the damages were caused to Korean-owned stores from the riots. So, and Koreatown took much of that fury, which prompted a lot of Korean men to sit up on the rooftops and shoot back, with like AK rifles and stuff like that. And it's a little difficult to like see or understand if that violence towards Koreans was like actually targeted because of the Latasha murder or previous tensions. But most of the sources speculate that like the Koreans were kind of just caught in the middle of the scuffle between the white and black battle and the racism between the two groups. And in my interview with Pastor Blake, he said himself he saw the riots, and he personally believes that the Koreans were kind of just caught in the crossfire, kind of like how you get like punished by your parents, you get slapped on the hand or you get spanked, and while you're going back to your room, you kind of just hit your brother just because he's in the way. He said it was kind of like that, and the problem is the damage had already been done. There was hatred on both sides because um, African Americans were attacking Korean businesses, and a lot of their livelihood was destroyed. But at the same time, Korean businesses or Korean men were shooting back at African Americans, and they were getting killed. But the whole thing about this entire situation is that it's about perspective. Like African Americans took to the streets because they were getting beaten and murdered and not fully contributed by the justice system, the white justice system, and they were under the system of systematic racism that was plotting against them. So they were under a horrible situation. And should they have attacked Korean businesses? Probably not, but I can understand why they did it. They had to revolt against their oppressive system. But Koreans shot down African Americans because they were destroying their livelihood, which I understand too. If my businesses were getting attacked and if my life was getting attacked, I would do the same thing. But what I don't understand is why the two groups have become so ignorant. Koreans should know the best out of everyone what it's like to be subjugated and beaten down because all throughout their history they were slaughtered by other countries such as Japan and Korea. Even not even a decade ago, Korea rioted against their own dictatorship in their own country. So Koreans do know what it's like to be beaten and fight back against an oppressor. So the fact that Koreans don't know the fact that they fail to see what it's like for the African American perspective and why they're like legitimately in the same boat as us is kind of insane to me. And now what does this have to do with the sociology of religion class? For the past 6 weeks of attending West Angeles, I learned several things. One major thing is that the religion isn't that different from ours. I've listened to hundreds of Korean lectures, and even though 6 weeks isn't that much, uh, from what I learned, they're not that different. So the main argument I'm trying to make is that we're essentially the same. We have the same ideologies, we've experienced similar forms of oppression, and we have a similar history. The only difference between us is the color of our skin. There is not much reason to attack one another or have an unwanted prejudice. Two, the people of West Angeles are some of the most kind people I've ever seen. Like, you know, the stereotype of black women being extremely sweet and kind. I can for sure say that is 100% true. I had so many old ladies give me like the biggest smile and a wave. A lot of them prayed for me, a lot of them gave me their blessings, and some of them told me to have a wonderful day after the lectures. And it's not just the black ladies too, but it's just everyone I've met over there. I have not had a single negative experience with a person, and I have been to dozens of different churches, both Asian and white, and I've never seen hospitality as welcoming as this one. And I'm not necessarily saying all these positive things about that church because I'm trying to mend a broken relationship or I'm trying to like make you guys view uh the black community in a specific way, but this is like genuinely what I saw. Like the alleged criminal and like the violent group from the Korean perspective had like being the most in reality being the most kind and hospitable people like really truly highlights the fact that this is not true. This stereotype from the Korean perspective is not true. So the argument I'm trying to make is that religion could be the connecting point between Koreans and African Americans. Like when I first went there, I half expected to be disconnected with the black community because I'm like the only non-black person there, but it was actually the opposite. I feel like everyone was kind, helpful, and positive, and I feel like I've actually gotten more recognition because I was not black. And it's so blatantly obvious that the Korean view of African American people is not true. And obviously, there's going to be some bad apples in a tree. There's bad apples in every demographic, but we cannot group an entire community based on those certain bad people or like the bad actions that happened. And with the same ideologies and same values and same core ideas, what really makes us different from one another? It's essentially just the historical clashes and historical clashes such as the Latasha murder and the LA riots and maybe even the COVID-19 Asian hate attacks. But it also has to do with the major ignorance that causes the rift between the two groups because they don't want to hear each other out and they're so traditional with their past that they don't want to hear each other. But I feel like religion can be a decent way to mend the relationships because a big part of religion is community. And maybe if you're Korean, you can attend like a black church or vice versa. But we could be